Hello students, today the module that we are going to discuss is good hygiene practices. Before we go into the actual topic, I would like to give you a brief introduction about the food safety. Food has to be safe and suitable for consumption. Consumption of unsafe food causes more than 200 different types of diseases. So it not only impacts the health of the public, it will also cause mortality and morbidity. And besides all these things, it also will impact the trade. The people who are involved in food business also will they lose their jobs, they lose their wages, and also the brand image of that food processing unit also gets affected with this unsafe food. With the liberalization, there is a lot of international business on food is happening, and this is also increasing the economies. And when we are trying to actually free import and free export, a lot of unsafe food also gets circulated in the international market. The objective of this particular module is to understand the importance of good hygiene practices in ensuring food safety and what are the basic principles of good hygiene practices. These are the two important objectives we will be learning in this module. Given this background, effective hygiene control in the entire food chain, that is from farm to fork, becomes very critical for ensuring the food safety. Thus, the food safety is a shared responsibility of all the stakeholders, farmers of food crops and food animals, manufacturers, processors, transporters, distributors, food handlers, and even consumers. It is now realized that following the good hygiene practice in every step in the food chain is essential to ensure the safety and suitability of the food consumption. Before going into the actual we have to define what is good hygiene practices. Good hygiene practices can be defined as all practices regarding the conditions and measures necessary to ensure the safety and suitability of all food at all stages of the food chain. Good hygiene practices can be termed as food hygiene practices also when they are applied in the context of food. Before going into the principle, it is important to understand the words of food safety and also food suitability. These are the two words we will be dealing when we are talking about what is food safety. Food safety as per FAO and WHO is the degree of confidence that food will not cause sickness or harm to the consumer when it is prepared, served and eaten according to its intended use. It is important to understand that food safety depends on how food is prepared, served, eaten. Any deviation at any stage may make food unsafe. That is the concept of food safety. Now we try to understand what is food suitability. As per FAO WHO, food suitability is the assurance that food is acceptable for human consumption according to its intended use. Food suitability means that food is in proper condition for consumption. Food may not have any safety issues, but it is not suitable for consumption according to its intended use. For example, sandwich bread has to be soft, but if it is hard, then it is not suitable for its intended use of making sandwich. So, the Codex, the international agency working under the aegis of Food and Agriculture Organization and World Health Organization, has developed the basic principles of food hygiene. These principles have been widely accepted and are being used world over. It is well recognized that food hazards can enter the food in any step during the food chain from production to consumer, that is farm to fork. So, there are 8 principles as per this Codex. They are primary production, then we will come to the establishment where design and facilities are also important. Then what are the control of operations in this food processing. So, what is the establishment in relation to maintenance and sanitation and personal hygiene, transportation, product information and consumer awareness, and also the training is a very important component of this good hygiene practices. Now, we will see each one of them. The primary production of food is the first step in food chain. The potentials of effects of primary production activities on the safety and suitability of food should be considered at all times. Any hazard introduced at this stage which may affect the food and suitability at the latter stages of food chain. The first and the foremost primary production should not be carried in areas where potentially harmful food hazards can enter the food chain. That is, it cannot be put in an industrial polluted area, a pollution where air pollution could be there. So, even the water, if it is polluted in that area, we are not supposed to have any food processing unit. So, how do we control the contaminants arising out of primary productions? So, the examples could be fertilizers, either synthetic or natural compost also may leave some of the contaminants like bacterial E. coli, salmonella in fresh vegetables. So, these also can be there because of the compost that is used as a fertilizer. Then the pesticides, some of the banned pesticides like organochlorines or misuse of permitted pesticides on food crops has to be taken care because they end up as having chemical hazards. And even animal feeds, agro waste having pesticides also should be considered when they are likely to become it's going to the food animals. Then the other thing that can come from primary production could be veterinary drugs. When we are talking about the food animals which are likely to be given some antibiotics or hormones for treating some of the diseases, or to increase the meat production. In such a case, we are also supposed to see how the milk is produced or how the meat is produced. And even in case of aquaculture also, some of these feed ingredients like antibiotics also sometimes used as a feed ingredient, then also we are supposed to see this is all comes as a part of primary productions. Even the feeds which are supposed to be given for food animals may have mycotoxins, then they also end up having into the food products which are actually from animal sources, like milk may have aflatoxin M1 if the feed has aflatoxin B1. So also antibiotics, as just now we were discussing about, some of the antibiotics are also as a part of feed ingredients. They may also end up having into the products like egg or meat. Even the hormones, a similar situation is true in case of hormonal injections also. When we are also trying to control the plant health or animal health, these pests or zoonotic diseases like bird flu, mad cow diseases which are actually affecting the animal health may also end up coming into meat that we are likely to, or even the milk that we are likely to consume. So while trying to do in the primary production, we are also trying to see that waste management and also storing of harmful substances. In the primary production, if supposing pesticides are kept somewhere where the contamination is likely to be there with the food crops, then also there is a problem. So when we are trying to check these type of things where these harmful substances in primary production area have to be kept, they should not again contaminate the food. So after harvesting the food, suppose we have taken care while the primary production as a crop production or animal production is taken care. After harvesting the food also, we also supposed to sort the food ingredients to segregate materials that is evidently unfit for consumption. So the grading, sorting, all those things have to be done so that the food which is not fit for use or even for consumption has to be separated, and the procedure should be in place to segregate edible parts or crop contaminants in the primary production area. So what do we do with disposal of the rejected material? It has to be in a hygienic manner so that it does not become a source of contamination later. The production of food and food ingredients from contamination by pests or any other contaminants during the handling, storage and transport also has to be done in the primary production stage itself. If it has to be stored at primary production center, supposing some of the food crops have to be stored at the primary production center itself before it is processed, there also we should have appropriate temperature of storing, humidity controls, so that some of the fungus which can grow on storage also can produce mycotoxins. So similar precautions have to be taken while transporting the food. For example, milk has to be transported in chilled conditions. If the temperature is a little higher, probably milk becomes unsuitable for consumption because it gets curdled because of the bacterial growth. Grains may be dry in conditions. If you are transporting grains, they should be probably have to be transported in a dry condition so that this fungus, other things cannot grow on that. And fruits and vegetables require different conditions, because if you want to keep them in fresh, then we need a different transport conditions, and any improper practices may make unfood. So if you are not taking any of these precautions, the food may become unsafe or even sometimes unsuitable for intended use. Even cleaning and maintenance and personal hygiene at primary production. So when we are talking about primary production, even these things, how you are actually cleaning that area, how you are maintaining that area, what is the personal hygiene of the people who are actually employed in harvesting or processing in the primary production area. So the proper cleaning procedures and maintenance of hygiene is very important. Not only the place, even for the people who are actually handling the food at that time point also has to be very taken care. So then we come to the establishment. So now we have a food has come to a processing place, then what is the design and facilities in that place? Once the primary production is over, the food may come to processing unit, and what should be the requirements of establishment? The establishment will have a design, facilities, control of operations, maintenance, sanitation. So within the establishment, these are all the components of establishment. Now we will see with the design and facilities in the establishment how they are important in maintaining the good hygiene practices. Good hygiene design and construction, appropriate location, and the provision of adequate facilities is necessary to enable hazards to be effectively controlled. So we will come to the location where this actually food processing unit has to be located. From the primary production, food is transferred to processing unit. Location of the processing unit is very important. If processing unit itself is actually situated or located in a polluted areas, then it becomes a source of contamination in food. And we also have to see that places subject to flooding unless sufficient safeguard are provided, should not be used as a processing place for processing the food. Places prone to infestation of pests. So some of the areas where because of the pollution or any other things, pests may be more in that particular area, then we have to be very careful. We should have proper location for that. Places where the waste, either solid or liquid, cannot be removed. Supposing the waste that are produced during processing, if there is no proper waste disposal, you can't have a proper waste disposal. That also, such type of locations also should be avoided, so that the contamination becomes a nuisance. Even premises and the rooms. So how actually premises, the processing unit has to be there, how clean it has to be there, what is the design, layout, internal structures and also fittings have to be taken care when we are trying to see the design. So how does internal structures affect the and fittings are important for good hygienic practices? The surfaces, floors should be made of impervious material with no toxic effect. What happens is that whenever there is actually cracks or the floors are having some gaps, maybe some of these food products are left with, then bacteria can grow, they become a biological contaminant in the food. So the surfaces and floors should be made of impervious material so that no contamination can occur in food. Walls and partitions should have a smooth surface up to a height appropriate to the operation. So even the walls and partition should have a smooth surface so that nothing gets into that food particle or any other particle gets into that gaps that are likely to be there if it is not properly, if not smooth surface. And the floor should be constructed to allow adequate drainage and cleaning. So the proper drainage has to be there. There should be a facility for proper cleaning. And the ceilings and overhead fixtures should not allow build up. The ceilings and overhead fixtures should be in such a way that they should not build up a dirt or condensation or shedding of the water. So nothing should fall from the ceiling, so that can become a contaminant in the foods. So windows should be easy to clean. So the design should be in such a way that we should be able to clean the windows, and they should not build up dirt, and where necessary be fitted with removable or cleanable insect proof screens. So wherever you expect that they are supposed to have insect screens, they should be we should be able to remove and clean it and then refix it. Where necessary, windows should be fixed, doors should have a smooth, non-absorbent surfaces and easy to clean, and whenever necessary, we should be able to disinfect them also by if you think that there are likely to be the infection. Working surfaces that come into direct contact with should be in a sound condition, durable and easy to clean, maintain and disinfect. They should be made of smooth, non-absorbent and inert to the food. So then we come to the equipment that are supposed to be used in food processing unit. Equipment location should be in such a place where it permits the proper maintenance, cleaning, and facilitates good hygiene practices, including monitoring. We should be able to actually clean it, and we should be open it and clean it and then refix it. The equipment should be designed in such a way that this type of facility should be there when we are actually processing the food. Equipment used to cook, heat treat, cool or store or freeze food should be designed to achieve the required food temperatures as rapidly as necessary in the interest of food suitability and food safety, and maintain them effectively. And what happens is, whenever the equipment which are supposed to be used for heating the food or cooling or even storing, the appropriate temperature should be reached as rapidly as possible so that it doesn't impact either suitability or safety of the food. Such equipment should allow temperature to be monitored. Even we should be not only keeping the temperature, we should be able to monitor the temperature. That means there should be a facility to check the temperatures effectively so that we can monitor and even control if they are going out of the control also. So containers of waste, so whatever the waste that is generated during food processing, inedible materials or byproduct should be appropriately labeled for easy identification and stored. So many times if proper identification is not made, there is every chance that cross-contamination can happen. So appropriate labeling has to be done even for the waste or the other materials or even byproducts. Then what about the water supply? That is the most important part of the food processing unit. Adequate supply of potable water, that is very important. It has to be potable water with appropriate storage facilities. So how are you storing the water, and what are the facilities? That facility itself should not become a source of contamination, and even the temperature also. What is the temperature that we are expecting, how it has to be stored also has to be taken care. Non-potable water used for steam generation, refrigeration, etc. should be separate lines, and no cross connection or reflux should be taken place. So when we are actually designing the water supply in the food processing unit, we have to be very careful that non-potable water should not come in contact with the potable water. So, those lines have to be separate. The non-potable water that is generally used for steam generation, refrigeration also has to be appropriately labeled, and it should not be in create any cross contamination. So, drainage and waste disposal, the proper drainage and waste disposal systems to be in place, constructed in such a way that they do not contaminate the food or potable waters. So, the design has to be in such a way that the waste, disposed waste or a drainage lines should not be anywhere near come and create a contamination in potable water. So, the lines have to be separate, and they should be built in such a way that they do not contaminate the food anyway. Cleaning is the most neglected area in the food processing area. People will not much bother once the process is over, the cleaning is not properly done, but adequate facilities, suitably designed cleaning procedures should be in place for cleaning food utensils, equipment, and such facilities should have an adequate supply of hot and cold potable water wherever they are appropriate. Then we come to personal hygiene facilities and toilets. The people who are actually working in the food processing area, they should have adequate means of hygienically washing and drying hands. There should be enough water and proper facilities both for washing and also drying hands, including wash basins, supply and hot and cold water, and adequate toilets. The number of toilets have to be appropriately designed in such a way that it will match the number of food handlers that are being employed in the unit, so that the contamination because of proper toilet facility also should not become a problem. There should be adequate changing facilities for personnel. Supposing in a unit where they supposed to actually change the dress, there should be adequate changing facilities for the people who are going into that processing unit. The temperature control is another important control that is supposed to be taken care when we are talking about good hygiene practices. The heating, cooling, cooking, refrigerating and freezing the food. So, these temperature control in all these facilities should have a monitoring and also control facility. We should be able to monitor what is the heat generator, what is the cooling temperature, what is the cooking temperature, what is the refrigeration temperature, what is the freezing temperature that is there in this unit, so that if any time it goes beyond control, it can be actually monitored and checked. Then comes to air quality and ventilation. So, there, as we discuss in chemical contaminants, the airborne environmental contamination also can happen. The airborne contamination of food, for example, aerosols or even condensation of droplets can actually contaminate the food. So, that is why we should be having proper ventilation, so that the aerosols will not come in contact with food, and even there should not be any condensation of any vapor that actually can become a contamination in the food. So, all these things have to be taken care. In some of the processing units, even the odors that might affect the suitability of food, sometimes the odor may actually make the food unfit for consumption. So, we should be able to take care in such a case that suitability and safety is ensured. When it comes to lighting in the design, proper lighting, it should not be misleading. So, the proper lighting, that means the colors that we are supposed to use, the type of lighting, the colors also is very important. We should not get confused if it is not properly lighted. When it comes to the storage, adequate facilities for storage of food ingredients, not only food, even the ingredients that are supposed to be used in food processing, and also non-food chemicals like cleaning materials, lubricants, fuels, which are also used in the processing unit, should be kept separately. The appropriate storage has to be created, so that they should not become a contamination in the food. Food storage should be designed and constructed to permit adequate maintenance and cleaning. So, there should be proper maintenance of these places. There should not be pests, because when you are actually storing some food, there is every chance that pest has to be controlled. They should not harbor any pests. We also should be enable food to be effectively protected from contamination during the storage. And wherever necessary, an environment has to be provided which minimizes the deterioration of food. Take for example, if temperature and humidity control also has to be taken care, so that the food should not become not suitable for processing also. So, how do you, once you have all these things, there should be control of operations to make food safe and suitable for intended. So, what are the control of operations? The control of operations could be raw materials, their composition, processing, distribution and consumer use to be met in a manufacture and handling of specified food items. Designing, implementing, monitoring and reviewing effective control systems have to be are part of the control of operations. So, for each one of them there should be standard operating procedures, there should be proper standards have to be maintained. When we are talking about control of operations, now we will also see the most important point in terms of food safety will be time and temperature control. So, take for example, what is the water activity, what should be the pH, what is likely initial level and types of microorganisms that are likely to be there when you are actually starting the process, what is the intended shelf life of the product. So, how long that product is likely to be there in the shelf or it is supposed to be made into another products, what is that time period this particular thing has to stay in that position has to be actually clearly understood. Accordingly the control operations have to be made. The method of packaging and processing, so how you are actually packaging, so what for it is being packaged, is it for direct consumption or it is going to be as a raw material for some other food product which finally may become a ready to eat product. So, in such a case what is the operations that you are, what control of operations we are supposed to take care also has to be in this part of the good hygiene. So, how the product is to be intended to use, further cooking or processing or ready to eat, this is what just now we have discussed. Depending on that type of requirement you should have control of operations. So, quality parameters with regard to the raw materials. So, the incoming raw materials, so what are the quality control parameters you have, how you are accepting the raw material, because the raw material quality, the contamination that comes with primary produce also likely to have impact on your final product. So, what are the quality control parameters, whether you have a proper physical, chemical and microbiological specification based on a science. So, scientifically based parameters have to be taken care and ensured that they actually meet the physical, chemical and microbiological specifications for that particular product. These all should be part of the control of operations. So, microbiological cross contamination, pathogens from one food to other, food handlers, contact surfaces, because this cross contamination can happen in any of these things like food handler contaminating the food or contact surfaces, something else has been processed there and you are actually keeping another food, there is a cross contamination. Even the utensils used for one food or one process, you are using it for another purpose. So, also the equipment, even the raw and even processed foods, if they are not kept separately, there is likely that cross contamination can happen. The high risk processing area should be via changing. So, supposing if you think one of these processing, you are processing a very high risk food, then processing area should have a changing facility so that the contamination is reduced. Even how to package the foods, once it is processed, how are you actually packaging, what is the design of packaging, what is the materials to provide adequate protection. So, what is the packaging material, whether it will take care of product to prevent a damage or accommodate proper labeling. So, even the labeling has to be very clear that how it has to be opened, where it has to be stored in such case, or if it has to be used, how it has to be used, what is the temperature it has to be handled. So, and if supposing some of those products, if you are actually packaging gas also is used, then it should not be toxic. So, water, when it comes, is one very important ingredient in the food processing area, when only potable water for food processing has to be used. If it is as an ingredient, the quality parameters of potable water has to be strictly used and accordingly it has mode. Even if ice is being prepared for as a processing unit for some purpose where it is being used in the food processing, then ice also has to be made from potable water only. So, even as an ingredient or even as an ice, you are in the processing unit, they are supposed to be using only the potable water. So, when come to pest control very specifically, then what are the things which we are supposed to control the pests? One is that good sanitation, inspection of incoming raw materials and monitoring will reduce the risk of pests, because they should not bring any pests when the raw material is being taken. Then the first thing is you have to prevent the access. What is the access for pests? You should understand and then prevent that. Then you should not have any place where they harborage or infestation will increase, because the conditions are very suitable for harborage. Then how do you monitor? How do you monitor that there is a pest? So, how do you detect if there is pests? So, these things have to be checked, and then how do you eradicate? So, all these things have to be taken care when we are trying to understand the pest control. If you are actually trying to do this, probably pest control is best managed. So, even when it comes to waste management, so what is the monitoring effectiveness? Whether how are you actually trying to see whether your managing the waste properly. This can be done by the sampling for microbiological status of environment, food contact surfaces, which if is regularly done, you are properly monitoring the effectiveness of waste management. The personal hygiene of the people who are involved in the establishment is a very important part of the establishment itself. So it is to ensure that those who come directly or indirectly in contact with food are not likely to contaminate food by maintaining an appropriate degree of personal cleanliness, even behaviors, and operating in an appropriate manner. So the importance point of the personal hygiene of the food handler, health status of food handler should not carry any infection, suffering from any infectious diseases, and illness, the conditions that should be reported to the management so that they need for medical examination and possible exclusion from food handling. The things which can be considered for some of the infectious diseases which should be actually guarded, they should be checked for this food handler should be jaundice, diarrhea, vomiting, fever, sore throat with fever. Visibly infected skin lesions also should be checked. They should not be allowed to come in contact with, and discharge from the ear, eye or nose should also not be there. The personal cleanliness is washing hands properly after using toilet. So whether the proper facilities are there after they use the toilet, and wearing protective headgear and trimming the nails, these are all part of the personal cleanliness of the food handlers. Even the behaviors, smoking is not allowed, spitting, they should not do spitting, they should not chew or eat anything during that time, and they should not sneeze or cough over the unprotected. So these are the personal behaviors of the food handlers that have to be actually checked. They should not be allowed to do any of those things. Transportation is the other important thing. While you actually process everything and then it has to be transported to the place where probably it has to be delivered, then food may become contaminated, may not reach its destination in a suitable condition for consumption unless effective control measures are taken during transport, even where adequate hygienic control measures have taken care earlier in the food chain. So you take all the precautions before it is being transported, but during transportation also food can become unsafe. So things that have to be kept in mind is, don't contaminate foods or packaging. It should be effective, even the transport vehicle should be effectively cleaned, and we should be able to disinfect it if it is required, and the effective separation of different foods from non-food items. Provide effective protection from including dust and fumes. While the vehicles are actually, the food is transported in a vehicle, so dust and fumes which are coming through the environment also should not contaminate the food. So we should be effectively protecting them from that type of things. And even the temperature, if some of those foods have to be transported in a particular temperature or humidity, that all have to be taken during the transportation. So otherwise food may become unsafe or unsuitable for consumption. Design and conveyance of bulk conveyors also should not contaminate the food itself, because the conveyors are used while transporting sometimes within the premises. There also they should not contaminate. We should be able to effectively clean them also, disinfect it if necessary, and provide protection from harmful or undesirable microbial growth also during that time by appropriate temperature, humidity, other conditions. The most important, the one that has to be kept in mind is finally the product information and consumer awareness also is a part of the food hygiene practices. So if people are not actually giving all the information of the product, there is the likelihood that consumer may misuse it. So inadequate knowledge of general food hygiene also can lead to products being mishandled at later stage in the food chain. Such mishandling can result in illness or products becoming unsuitable for consumption. So while actually product information has to be very clear on that, what has to be done with that product, otherwise there is every chance that this mishandled. So there should be lot identification, product information, labeling, consumer education also has to be there properly on this one. Then the training of the people who are actually involved in the entire process, if they are not actually aware of what is the basic food hygiene, what are the factors which can affect the food safety and suitability, if they are not made aware of those things, if they are not trained on those things, they are likely to contaminate food, because they will not be unless they understand the relation between their activities and food safety. Then the training of the people who are actually involved in the entire process, if they are not actually aware of what is the basic food hygiene, what are the factors which can affect the food safety and suitability. If they are not made aware of those things, if they are not trained on those things, they are likely to contaminate food, because they will not be understand unless they understand the relation between their activities and food safety. So, training becomes very important in this process. To summarize the module on good hygienic practices, now we understood that unsafe food can cause more than 200 different types of diseases. So, to ensure food safety and its suitability for consumption, we have to follow good hygiene practices. They can be actually, Codex Alimentarius Commission has provided some basic principles how to ensure food safety. Under this, it will start from primary production to the final consumer consumption of the final product by the consumer, and also various factors that are likely to influence even the training of the food handlers who are actually part of this program. So, likewise, there are different components of good hygiene principles that have to be followed to ensure that the food is safe and suitable for consumption.